Hello, everyone. This is Jefferson Keith Langley, Oswork. This is a segment I call Deep Walkers, and I invite people on this recording to have some deep, intimate conversations about things we all may think about throughout the day, but we don't ever take the time to stop and chat about it and really break it down and come to a good place about things. So today I have a good friend and colleague, Zach Nunez. He's an entrepreneur, tech guy. I think he calls himself a technologist, but he can correct me on that. Originally from Texas. He's a good old boy, like myself, both growing up in the South. And he's a father. He's a determined guy to do good things in the world, and he's had some stints in Afghanistan, served in the Army for quite some time, so thank you for your service, Zach. Everybody welcome Zach Nunez.
Thanks. Pleasure being here. Thank you, Jefferson.
Right on, brother. How are you, man?
Pretty good. Day started pretty early for me. As you said, family. So I got some family events going on quite early for the day. Started off at 5 a.m. and, got the engines humming. And we're doing well.
I get it. Yeah, you have a competitive athlete daughter, right?
Yes. Yep. She plays softball, and she goes 110% all the time.
I get it. Good for you. So today we are talking about a subject that I think a lot of people think about, and I know for me it's a big one that I'm always pushing with myself and with clients or whatever, or friends are asking to be pushed in that direction, and it's about mastering your emotions, or what I call staying grounded. How do emotions affect our everyday life? What do they do? What are they actually? I mean, where does an emotion come from? All that kind of stuff. I mean, things that I've thought about since I was a little kid, and have been always precocious about it and inquisitive about that topic. So how do you feel about that, Zach?
These are things that I love to think about, as well as you mentioned early that it is something that we all think about. And, they're great. It's a great topic.
So when I think about this, I used to joke with friends, growing up and going, that emotions aren't real, and people, like, oh, don't tell me I'm not feeling this, and don't tell me I'm not upset because I'm pissed and I have a legitimate reason. And I would always kind of go like, okay, I'll prove to you. Put anger in my hand, give me a ball of, wad up a ball of love and put it in my hand so that I can kind of like hold it and put it in my pocket if it's real. And they go like, oh, whatever, man. But I mean, I just wanted to start it off with that and kind of explore the heck is an emotion and where does that come from? Because I think I think when people are in an emotional state and they kind of spiral or they find themselves uncontrollable in that emotion, there's a detachment, almost like a string that's ripped from some kind of grounding post that makes us sort of drift without having kind of a tether to, standing straight up and being present in the situation. Is that making sense? Do you have thoughts about that?
Yeah, when you bring up the fact that people can spiral out of control, and, it brings up the fact that one of the big things of humanity is that we are, as you said, when you mentioned you can feel detached, we're supposed to be attached. Everybody has something that that is not tangible, but it exists between each other, and it's so important to have people around you at all times. There needs to be some interactions there to help, as you mentioned, ground these emotions. The emotions are like electricity almost. They require a flow to exist. And
right.
when you have like some of these I think these negative emotions, or again, as you say, these kind of spiraling emotions, it's usually indicative of the fact that the person's kind of short-circuited a bit. You know, they don't have anybody there to help share a load, or they don't have anybody or anything else there to kind of be ground for that load of electricity, you know, kind of thing. So if you were to kind of equate emotion to what electricity is, I think it has some concrete, you know, understandings in that whole sense there. Like, it's super important that there be a way of kind of continuity between people when it comes to emotion. It should not be a singular experience.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And I understand. Yeah. I mean, I like the electricity because it brings up something, you know, jovial in the sense of like we need, you know, it's almost like humans need like a surge protector, like we have for the outlets, you know, where if too much surge comes in, there's a switch that happens that kind of goes, all right, stay grounded, settle. And I've always been interested about like, and playing off of what you're saying about this electricity, you know, the energy, everyone thinks energy is, you know, very hokey and stuff, but, you know, it's not. It's a well-known, accepted concept by all top people in science, all that it's all made up of energy, and everybody knows that, and Einstein and all that stuff. But that energy source, where do you think that energy source stems from, and what is the purpose of that electricity that you're talking about for a human being? Why would it be there? Or do you think it's been put there on purpose, or do you think it's something that just manifested itself over millions of years? Now all of a sudden emotions exist. I mean, what are your thoughts on where does it come from?
I mean, it's an interesting thing. You know, we understand that certain chemicals in our brain cause different emotion, right? We know like serotonin and dopamine and those type of things have effects on a human being's state. And so you know that there's some type of biological thing that exists, that these our organs and things are able to secrete certain chemicals, and they have a certain reaction that stimulates the brain in a certain way. So from like that aspect, it's very spontaneous in a sense, right? It's through like evolution it exists. But why did it exist? And one of these things are like, when you really think about what is the reason humanity has this, but is it just, even when I go down that road, I'm thinking about like, why does humanity have this? I have to step back and think about the fact that emotion isn't only a human element, right? Like this exists in
dogs,
in things like plants as well. You could see plants that will come together to touch. You see it in dogs, you see it in cats, a fish. I had 2 goldfish at one time when I was a younger boy, and it was so interesting. I experienced something that I'd never noticed before, but I had one of the goldfishes. One day, it was pushing the other one through the water, and it turned out that other goldfish had passed. And so I removed it out of the tank, you know, and cleaned it out and everything like that. But the second goldfish stopped being active. Even when I would feed it, it stopped eating. And eventually it died the next day. And it was so impactful to understand, like, man, these things exist just everywhere in anything that has life.
There's a symptom.
Now, So it begs the question, truly, like, why does this exist? What is the purpose of it, and is it truly just a phenomenon that exists within biological entities?
Right.
Or is there something greater that was designed to say, in order for biological things to function properly, there needs to be this concept of emotion for, again, a continuity of cohesion of all this other type of stuff. So it just really makes you think about the fact that there there has to be some type of higher order of things that are almost in the space of design, or that the fact that it is just it's either two things, right? It has to be. It's either just a complete phenomenon, or it's by design by a higher intellect, or intelligence of any kind, right? Not just a single intellect, but it could be another higher order of dimensional entity or some crap. It goes crazy. But when you really think about it, you have to really think about this. If you just really ponder and consume, like, where does emotion present itself? It's in all of life. It's very interesting.
Right. Yeah. I have a theory about it, and I'll share it and just kind of get your feedback and your take on it. Is just a what if, and for people to consider, could emotion be, and I'll tie it into your daily job as well, Zach, and is that, could it be a form of measure? In order for us to have a pinpoint on where we are with something. So let's say I put something in front of a person and they immediately get upset. If using that as a form of measure, saying if my emotion is a measuring system that is inside this biological entity that says I need to have a way to keep tabs on myself, to say, am I in a good place with this subject or this situation, or am I in a negative place with this subject? So and in that system, let's say it's been designed, okay, well, we'll go down that road, that we need to have both sides of the pendulum. You need to have negative all the way to the umpteenth degree. You have to have positive all the way to the umpteenth degree. And we drift in between it to try to take authority of the emotions themselves and say, like, well, if I have a say-so, is there a way for me to stay on the positive side of this measuring system? What do you think about that?
Yeah, so you are going into the space that I feel it's around morality, right? And emotion becomes a litmus test of different behaviors, and you're able to learn from it by not only what you do, but what you can observe other people are doing, and it helps people understand, as it said, the unwritten rules of things. Like, there are unwritten rules or there are written rules of these things, but like in a ballet or something like that, when do you clap? Right. When do you applaud? These types of things can sometimes just be hidden, or they can be written down. But if you don't know about them, one of the ways you can know is by observation. So I think it's actually a great thing that it could be a evolutionary thing that has helped, biological species be able to gauge how to interact with each other. Because, if it becomes this litmus test for that, then you can easily but you can easily feel when certain behaviors or interactions are acceptable and when they're not. Because even though certain things today are legally acceptable, and even societal acceptance exists, such as like killing a caterpillar or a bug or something, right? Like, you just kill a roach, a cockroach, right?
Yeah.
Some people are like, oh yeah, you just killed a cockroach and nobody bats an eye, but there are people it's okay though, because you don't have an emotion towards it. It's usually like, I killed this bug and you don't feel anything towards it and nobody else does, so that's why they accept it as something that's okay to do. But if you happen to kill a hamster or a cat, that evokes an emotional response out of people, and then it begs, an evaluation of like, was that a good thing to do or not a good thing to do? So I think you're totally in the right realm of like, is it a compass of how we are to behave amongst each other,
and to monitor ourselves and others, because we're working on projects together. I mean, you're a game design, game engineer at a big game company, and this massive game company. You're around engineers. That it's not like one day you show up and the code wrote itself. You're designing it. You're coding it. It was intentional, right? There was a purpose for everything that you were having the game do or not do. Is that safe to say?
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I have really leaned towards the idea that a higher intellect must exist of some kind.
Right.
When you think about machine learning and AI, there are like 3 different forms of artificial intelligence that exist, and most of the AI that we interact with today has what would be known as narrow intelligence. And what that means is that it does one specific thing only, and it does it really well.
Right.
And those types of things just show like it wouldn't exist if there weren't something designing it, right? It's not happenstance that your iRobot is able to go around and vacuum up the home. Somebody made that and designed its decision trees and everything like that. And now it evolves, right, where we can have it take different inputs and make decisions on its own. That's where we're getting.
Right.
But somebody had to design that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And is there, we interact a lot from our project, and, I always, to kind of validate this kind of path we're taking about that it's a monitoring system, it's a litmus test, it's a gauging whatever form of measure, as it's just the way that I would do it, is that when we're interacting, I notice quite often I check you to go like, is he in a good space, is he not in a good space, which I'm sure you do the same with me, and we can feel. And, when you know each other well, like we, are getting better and better every day. But I notice that it's not just an internal, that I can also, the people can do that. People listening, if you walk up and go, dude, that dude is pissed. I don't know what it's about, but it's clear he's pissed. And maybe he's just standing there, but you feel it. And how this measuring system can also be sensed externally as well, right?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I think is a protective thing that we have. One is it comes into the topic of profiling. I know some people are very emotionally triggered sometimes with that word, but it's like a fight or flight type of mechanism that exists. You have to be able to observe the actions of others. If they're exhibiting a certain behavior, I don't want to be near that person, or maybe I move my family 6 feet more away from that individual, or it's for some of us that have the tenacity to deal with those type of situations. Maybe that's a calling sign for you to actually engage the individual, not for a physical altercation or anything, but maybe to help dissolve or, bring some, as we mentioned earlier, some continuity to that emotion that may exist that's currently not stable. And, I agree. It's definitely something that is, like, again, it just allows us to interact with each other in a, at most, harmonious way we can.
And maybe in a way help each other as well, as going, I'd like to contribute to your measuring system being in a positive space, or obviously the opposite. I would like to contribute to being in a negative space, whatever. How do you stay? Do you stay grounded all the time? Do you find yourself or what you might say cool-headed, or whatever the terms would be, the slang, do you find yourself struggling to stay grounded, or have you worked at it to kind of be engaged with that system so that it doesn't dominate you with that electricity at its own will, like on its off the cuff, it just goes, hey, zap, do you stay grounded in a particular way?
So for me, it's something that I had struggled with early on in my life. Mainly it's due to what you're surrounded by and what your kind of the people that have been charged to kind of be over you, right? That could be a guardian, a parent, or anything like that. Any figurehead that could have influence over your sphere of existence. And due to the ones that I had around me, they were not the best models of what you would expect in society, or to how to deal with different types of emotions and things like that. And because of that, mine ran very rampant, and it was like a short somewhere that it was just leaking amperage, right? We're talking on this electricity standpoint. It was just leaking amperage everywhere, and it was uncontrollable. It didn't happen until my early 20s that I was able to start associating with some individuals that were like second father heads for me. And it allowed me to kind of understand things a little from perspectives. There was a lot of like, you need to slow down some of the times, right? Like emotions they're quick to come up. One of the things that's great about being a human is that you can self-reflect on some of those thoughts. And it takes great energy to say, you know what, let me try to really understand the situation right now. Even though I have an immediate response to what's going on, let me make sure that I have not, been over tweaked on something and it's not, being out of hand here. Like those type of things weren't learned naturally. It requires people to be around you to help train you in that, and then getting into my 30s, my early 30s was like, hey, I started getting around some leaders that really helped, again, guide me down pathways of like how to deal with certain situations. So before you get to this, typically you would go through these ranges of learnings through your childhood, right? And I had to do this as an adult because, again, my childhood wasn't surrounded by the best. So as an adult, I was going through the stages that you would normally do. And you go through the first stage, which is like, hey, let's tell you how to deal with emotions in the most generalist sense. And then, again, for me in my 30s, it was like learning how to go through emotions for specific situations. And, again, all of these things you're constantly learning. So you're constantly having to learn to deal with things. So not only do you have this, like, default primitive mechanism that exists within ourselves, like how we deal with people we've never met or just deal with things that we've never interacted with, but as you grow, you start to learn to deal with people, right? So you no longer just learn how to interact with, hey, that's a dog over there, that's a cat, and it may be a threat, it may not, but you have your emotions that help keep you in check with how you live in the world. You have to grow into a phase where then you start to learn to interact with people. How do I grow my emotional intelligence? How do I start to be a leader also, and that thing was not natural for me, and it was not something that came early for me. It's come really late in my life. But because of that, it requires a lot of energy of mine to actually come back and calibrate things and be able to say, have I been doing good? Was I taking the right course of action with different things? Because all my actions are motivated by emotion, and then one of the things you have to really learn from me was, where does it matter the most? Does it matter how I make others feel, or does it matter how I make myself feel? And I think that's a question. Yeah, or both, right? Doesn't matter how both feel. Is it always a mutual thing? And I think that's one of that's the next evolutionary step for me. I'm not there yet. I don't know. Right now it's case by case, but I haven't gotten to a point that I've gotten to a true understanding. Hey, this is probably the best thing. Like, you always worry about your personal emotion. I think that's probably not the answer, right? Because if you only care about yourself, I think that it showcases in our landscape of today that it has very negative consequences. But if you also only care about others, it has its shortfalls as well. So it's something that's intriguing for me to learn next. Like I said, it's probably my next thing. But overall, just to answer the question, no, it is not easy for me. It is not something that I don't struggle with, right? I believe everyone struggles with this. But it is something that I have to continuously work on. I think we say this in sports, right? Practice makes perfect. And if there's anything that you're doing bad with, and I know this is going on a little tangent here from just emotion, but it plays itself really well in like getting your emotions in check. If you think about practice makes perfect, it's like me and my spouse. What we talk about is like, hey, if we haven't gone on dates in a while, we want to start dating again, and we have a date and it wasn't well, it isn't that, oh, well, we shouldn't do that anymore. It just means we're not good at it right now, right? We got to practice. We got to go on more dates, and that way we get better at it. If I went to a party with you and I didn't treat you a particular way, it doesn't mean we don't go to parties anymore. That means that now we got to go to more parties, and I learn to treat you the way you expect. It's like this practice always. And the same thing with emotion. Yeah. If I was in an interaction in a meeting at work and it didn't go well, I'm not going to avoid those meetings. Like, no, I need to learn to, one, reflect on that and be in those environments more often so I learn how to grow the emotion and the interactions properly. You got to just continuously be doing this stuff. So for me, it is a continuous thing that you have to practice, that you have to be aware of, and you have to do it every single day.
Yeah. Staying grounded is an interesting one, huh?
It is. And it's not an easy thing either. Yeah, absolutely.
It can be. I mean, I think we can train, as you say, to use the sports metaphor, you play how you train, I think I'm a big self-reflection guy as well, but I'm also something that I like to do that I think helps me tremendously is like I don't know, you could call it self-foresight or self-forecast, and kind of look at things beforehand and go, can I eliminate some of the stuff that's going to maybe come up, or things I might know that I have an issue with that I could work on, and work on that ahead of time so that when I hit that spot, it's not there. If I know that it pisses me off about something, or I don't have a good vibe about something, to me, it just seems so much smarter to go, hey, I'm going to work on myself and that system that's inside, because obviously there's something unresolved or something I feel about that's not going to be about that person. What I always found interesting is I could see people get super pissed, and I'd look at it going, you don't even know that person. There's no way you could be that pissed about that right there. That's got to be something else.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? There's no way that you haven't been angry up until now and just that guy did that and so now you're pissed. That to me just seems completely impossible, And I try to, and I look at it and I go, in my off time, when I have time, or I take a half hour, an hour, or whatever, I sit and look and go like, what do I not feel good about? What can I work on ahead of time? And I know you're in the same space of kind of intercepting or preluding things that don't necessarily need to be that way. And I see it when we work together on our projects and stuff. And it's one of the things that one of the things I admire about you, but it's a thing that I go, he's not afraid to think about it and to really take a look at it, whatever it is, and we'll deal with the information we get. That's just, and I think it's helpful as a partner, working together as a friend, as a colleague, that you are a good reflection that I'm hanging around and I'm associating with the right kinds of people who take the time to, investigate and take the data and say, what does that mean to me as an individual and what does that mean to us? And I think as you said so, perfectly, is that, we're seeing it in everyday life right now with what's going on is, the who's thinking about others and who's thinking just about themselves and who's thinking about the whole unit. And I think if people have a takeaway from this, today is that, just know that being grounded is something that we can work on and we can work at. And, I know, Zach, you have people you go to for advice. I go to people for advice. I think advice and helpers is what life's all about, because it kind of is all going full circle. I'm going to pass that to someone else, and someone else is going to be, an advisor to someone else, and then that person's going to go be an advisor to someone, So thank you for being on the show, and hopefully you'll come back and we can talk about something else.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. I would love to speak again, and thank you for having me. And, for anybody who is listening, I want you to know that having somebody to help you assess things is not a weakness, and it's honestly a necessity. You may get an email or a text from somebody. You may read it the wrong way. Ask around for help. Ask somebody that has no attachment, that doesn't know the person, and because they're going to give you the most objective viewpoint that may help you address the situation differently than you would have. So lean on each other. Have someone, and it could be literally anybody. Right. But that's going to be so much help for you. Yeah.
That's brilliant. Yeah, that's good, man. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening. Deep Walkers, Episode 1, Zach Nunez. And we're signing off. And, please stay tuned, like the button, all that jazz. I appreciate it, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.